Willkommen zur Bilanzpressekonferenz.
Welcome to our press conference for the first half year 2019.
Einige neue Kollegen
Let me introduce a
vorstellen.
few new colleagues to
Mit
you.
Alexandra Habeler-Drabek
Alexandra
beginnen. Sie ist seit 1.
Habeler-Drabek.
Juli Chief Risk Officer
She's a
in der
Chief
ERSTE
Risk
Group und war
Officer
davor
in
der
the
Chief
ERSTE
Risk
Group
Officer
before she was Chief Risk
in der
Officer
Slowakei.
in Slovakia.
Neben mir Stefan
Next to me,
Dörfler,
Stefan Dörfler.
bis Ende Juni die Geschicke in
Until the end
Österreich
of June, he
geleitet
was
hat
in charge
und
of
seit 1.
Austria,
Juli
and as of the
der
1st of
Chief
July,
Financial
he's
Officer
the
der
Chief
Gruppe ist
Financial
und
Officer
Ingo
of the
Bleier,
group, and Ingo Bleier.
der seit 1. Juli für
Since the
das
1st of July,
Corporate-Geschäft
he's responsible for the corporate business and the
zuständig
market
ist. Und
business
Peter
of the
Brabeck
group.
ist
And Peter Brabeck
schon fast ein alter Hase.
is well known to all of us.
Beginnen wir mit
Let
dem
us start
Ergebnis für das Jahr 2019 und in
result
welchem
for
Umfeld sich das
2019 and the business
abgespielt hat.
environment.
Wir haben ein paar Vergleiche jetzt gebracht, die Sie hoffentlich interessant finden werden.
We made a few comparisons that you will find interesting.
Schon
You find this in your
Zunächst,
documents. First,
ist es jetzt, glaube ich, wirklich ein Faktum, dass in
It's a
der
fact
Postkrisenzeit
in the
sich etabliert
post-crisis
hat, dass
time, it
die
has
Länder
been
in
shown
Zentraleuropa
that the countries in Central and Eastern Europe
BIP-Wachstum stärker sind.
are stronger in their GDP growth than Western Europe, almost without exception. And the question is, why is this the case, and can this remain? Because the region depends strongly on Germany, the export country. Well, this has been the case for 20 years, and nevertheless, it's been growing much more strongly than Germany and Europe as such. And we're convinced that this will be the case in the years to come as well. Naturally, there are a few questions that we'll have to ask ourselves. Where does the car industry go? What's the economic development in Europe be like in general? But we have these very clear factors, and we've done a lot of research on this and have analyzed this. So unless there is a total change, of course, in CEE, these countries will grow more strongly in the years to come. This is for sure. This has got to do with the dynamics of convergence, with the labor market conditions, with a comparison of the social welfare state here and there, then the labor law conditions, the tax situation. It's a region that is more interesting for entrepreneurs to invest in at the moment than in other European countries. And this is why the unemployment rate, of course, goes down. In Czechia, for instance, we have full employment now. This, of course, has an impact on our cost side, because we are getting closer to full employment, and this is, of course, more pressure on the salaries. This will be the case. It's a normal development, and we should be happy about this, because rising salaries is not a matter of our employees, because, of course, they are happy to earn more and to catch up with Western Europe. But we also have many more customers than employees, and the customers also have their income. And of course, this also impacts our balance sheet and our income statement. What you see here are the convergence criteria, comparison with Burgenland, and we also took in some peripheral regions. And you see that the Czech Republic GDP per capita, well, it can be discussed what the GDP per capita actually is. It's just an indicator for the relative prosperity of a region. And Hungary and Romania have caught up with the peripheral regions in Europe. Czechia has taken over Burgenland, will overtake Carinthia and most other Austrian states. And if things go on the way they are going on now, they will tie-in with Austria or maybe overtake us. In the next 15 to 20 years, this may be the case. Well, it's been the case. It was the case before many, many years ago. What is the effect of the convergence? There was a dampening during the crisis, 2009 to 2018. You see the dampening, but now things are moving up. And things are different from the pre-crisis time. It's no longer the bonanza-like atmosphere. You see this continuous increase in convergence year on year, and comes closer to the EU average. Of course, this also has a social component. You cannot compare the countries here because the poverty is differently defined in individual countries. But on the whole, poverty is decreasing in those countries. In Romania, for instance, we have very high levels still, unfortunately. Despite the politicians, it goes down. And this is an excellent chart here that keeps preoccupying us. A lot is written about this as well. We are on negative ground now. You may pay for the fact if you sign a 10-year government bond. We talk a lot about the Japanization of Europe. That is coming closer and closer. Actually, we're already in the middle. But many of us make a big mistake because what they do not consider is that in this Japanization of Europe, the fact is that Europeans are not Japanese, and the Japanese are a very disciplined people who think in the long term. And if you look at the Japanese, how they have handled the situation for the past 3 decades, just imagine this for Europe. In Japan, for instance, a 20-year-old, if they want to start a family and cannot take a risk, although the capital market is much more developed in Japan than in Austria and Europe, the young people do not invest massively in shares, but basically they can draw on their savings and cannot earn anything with their savings. So we live quite modestly, they say, because we cannot afford any adequate accommodation. So they live in a small apartment. They have their children in this small hole, as it were, and month by month they take their savings to the bank. They do not get any interest rate on this, but they keep doing this for over 20 years. And then once they are in their mid-40s or 50s, this is demonstrated by the age structure of the house builders in Japan. These are usually middle-aged people in Japan. So they say for 25 years, we will be saving to have enough money on the bank that we can use as a collateral for a housing loan. 10% own funds, 90% financing, same with us. So if we have saved 5 million yen, then I can afford a loan for 45 million yen, and I can buy an apartment for 50 million yen. And then I repay this loan again at a 0 interest rate for over 20 years. Well, I don't know whether we Europeans think about the same way, that young people say, let's save for 25 years, do not make any holidays, go on trips so that we can have a good life at the age of 50. So if the politicians want to turn us into Japanese, I think this will be a big job. Well, what we find is what this is an indirect tax to take the money out of the people's pockets, and it's of course the banks that are to blame. This is the situation in Austria. As ERSTE Group, we are fortunate that we have a fast-growing business, a massively growing business in countries where interest is paid and where deposits are good, and where, in contrast to the EU zone, the trend is upward. In Czechia, you see the interest rate has risen by over 1%. In Hungary as well. This is good for our customers and good for us. In Croatia, it doesn't matter at all because they want to also catch up with Europe and enter the Eurozone. But most of the Croatians are investing in euros anyway already. And now to the result.
So our net profit is excellent, 732 million in the first half of the year. Well, it should have been the best half year ever in the history of the company, and it would have been that, but there was a judge in Romania who had a very, I would say, interesting interpretation of existing laws, and that cost us 150 million, an impairment of 150 million in the first half of the year. So unfortunately, we didn't make the record which we would have liked to make, but it's satisfactory. Nevertheless, our operating revenues are much better than they were last year. And with this, I hand over to Stefan. Thank you very much, Andreas. Ladies and gentlemen, following up what Andreas Streichel said, I'd like to show you the basis for our improving operating revenues and a significantly improved operating result. We're growing in our core business, growing significantly. This diagram shows that across all regions, across all countries, we're able, not just in absolute terms, but also in most of the markets, in relative terms, we are growing. During the first half of 2019, particularly in our corporate business. Mr. Bleier will say more about that. So we've been growing in our corporate business, and our growth rates in retail business, single mid-digit growth rates, that is plus minus 5% or 6.1% even, is what we achieved. Therefore, we can reach our targets, if not outperform them, driven and supported by a strong net trading result in the first half of the year. We report operating revenues that are 6.5% higher than in the comparable period, 980 million euro net fee and commission income. It's not shown here, but Andreas Streichel even mentioned a target of 2 billion euro at a press conference. It's going to be a tough job to reach this net fee and commission income, but we are doing very well, as these growth figures show, and 500 million per quarter is something we will be able to reach in the coming years. Now, growth has its costs. When you look at the operating expenses, up by around 3%. For the full year, it will be around 3%, at least slightly less than the 3.3% shown here. What needs to be borne in mind that there are significant salary increases, particularly in Romania, the Czech Republic, and Hungary. Salaries have increased significantly there, and for our Austrian colleagues, it's not unknown that in the collective bargaining agreement the result was plus 3%, which is significantly more in recent years. All that is included in the operating expenses and, of course, our investments in our digital future, which I will talk about later on. All that translates into an increase in our operating result by more than 11%. It's the result of income and expenses. It's something that is not sustainable. I'm quite sure about that. And in our forecasts for the end of the year, we think that both on the earnings side and on the cost side, we will make our targets, and we will be able to increase our operating results. All that has an impact, a positive impact, on our cost-income ratio. In the first half of 2019, we have been below 60%. This is a first step towards the attainment of our longer-term targets. But I have to point out, this is only a means to an end. A cost-income ratio is an indicator which may be at different levels in different sectors. For us, being efficient in our business is the basis for investments. Peter Bravek can say more about that. We will certainly have to make substantial investments in our digital future, in the transformation of our IT systems, and if we are efficient in our operational business, we have a great advantage, and the first half of 2019 testifies to that. Another point to be made here is that this is the basis for capital generation. Our equity is driven by the operating result. The second component is the risk situation. So, what has been the capital development in the first half of the year? On the basis of Basel III fully loaded, we have a flat development. Why is it flat? A business growth also means a higher value in terms of risk-weighted assets, and for our shareholders, the dividend which we are planning, 75 basis points have been provisioned for the first half of the year, and we are planning for a dividend of 1.5 euro per share. It will depend on how things develop in the course of the year and what the equity ratio is going to be and what the shareholder ultimately decides about the dividend. This is still open. As I said, the operating result is excellent. The risk situation is a positive one because of the low interest landscape and also the excellent risk management of the group. With this, I hand over to Alexandra. So good morning also from my part. I've taken over the risk management from Willi Czanko. Risk is keeping a low profile, but that can change. The development shows very well that our costs of risk reflect the cyclical development. Repeatedly, we've been seeing positive costs of risk. Against the background of a strong macroeconomic environment in our region, we can release risk provisions more than the risk provisions set up. In our case, it's 43 million net releases, which contribute to the positive result. The fact that we have positive costs of risk or no costs of risk, this doesn't mean that we're not taking any credit risk, because we tend to be seen in the wrong light. We tend to be perceived as people who want to avoid risk at any cost. But we're not risk avoiders, we're risk managers, and we do take credit risk, and we've been growing in our lending business. Another positive image is the development of our non-performing loans. Our NPL ratio has dropped from over 10% in 2013 to less than 3%. This is a further improvement compared to the previous year and the previous quarter. This is due to two factors. Our lending business is growing, which means that the percentage of NPLs is going down, and the NPL volume is also declining in absolute terms. This is the result of targeted and very successful work. Well, you can see that across our regions, particularly in Austria, savings banks have made a significant contribution and strongly reduced their NPL volume. When you look at the NPL coverage ratio, which increased to more than 75% in the second quarter, this all reflects a very healthy credit portfolio. So we are well positioned even for more difficult times. We're growing at high risk quality that applies in particular to corporate business, and my colleague Immo Bleier is going to say more about that. Thank you, Alexandra. Ladies and gentlemen, a few words about our corporate business and the capital markets business. It's not as quiet in our case as it is in risk management, because we're faced with tough and intensive competition. But we report a 6% increase in corporate loans in the first half of the year. This applies to all fields of corporate business. The SME segment, more than 3,500 new customers compared to the first half of 2018, and a 6% growth in income and an 8% growth in loan volume. This development can be seen in our bread and butter business. We call it transaction banking. More accounts, more cash management, supply chain management is developing well under the heading of supply chain. So everything has a broad base. I can also report that in our capital markets business we've been quite successful. We acted as lead manager in 18 equity and debt capital markets transaction in the first half of 2019 alone. And this meant that we facilitated over 4 billion in capital markets funding to corporates in the region. Of course, we have to continue investing in order to strengthen and consolidate our position. Digital innovation consists of various building blocks. On the one hand, a platform for Schuldscheine. Schuldscheine are an instrument that comes from Germany. More and more customers, corporate customers, are using that. And we are the first bank in Austria to issue SSDs paperless. And in the autumn of this year, we are going to start with trade finance on blockchain. Preparations are going on intensively, and we hope to go live in September. And we are the first bank to offer the first fully automated end-to-end digital loan. So that's another building block for growth in the corporate business. So both in innovation, in capital markets business, and in corporate business, we are making progress. And we are going to continue along these lines with our colleagues from Eastern Europe. So I'll step in for Peter Bossek and say a few words about our retail business. We had rather good growth rates throughout the region, more than 5%. In mortgage lending, even almost plus 9%. Deposits increased by 9%, 117 billion deposits from retail customers. In the field of asset management, we have also been growing by 5.7%. I would prefer 11% increase in asset management and only 5% on the deposit side. It's not because people don't want to invest in low-risk products where they can earn a percentage point or 1.2%. Customers are willing to accept that, but such products are difficult to find. Basically, all government bonds are down to zero or in the negative range. No need to talk about bank bonds, about life insurance or building societies saving. We have to go outside the region or in the corporate segment in order to get something that is worthwhile. Our colleagues from the ECB are buying whatever they can buy. So it's really a question of the offer. We would love to offer billions or sell to our customers billions of secure investment products, but 6% growth is not very much. 11% growth would be better. As regards George, it's not true. We haven't reached 5 million George users yet, but on average, in recent years, we gained another 5,000 customers per day. So as of mid-August, we will have 5 million George users, perhaps end of August, and that's great. And in our net fee and commission income, we can see that George is a good thing for us. We may have been lucky, we may have had the right feel in building an open platform. There are many platforms, there are many digital products, but George is an open platform where we can include partners. We don't pretend to be able to do everything better than others. If someone has something that's really good, we can download it or upload it on George, and all our customers can now upload all their other bank accounts in George, and they can see their entire financial life on George. And within a couple of years, customers, if they want to, can see and do everything on their iPad, not just with money they have with ERSTE Bank, but for their entire financial life. And I think that was an excellent step, and we can see already that in Austria, Czech Republic and Slovakia, where the rollout has already taken place, this is reflected in our P&L. Customers that are on George contact us 20 to 30 times as often. Customer touch points are 20 to 30 times more than with customers that are not on George. Romania is also doing well and will be starting soon. Hungary and Croatia are still missing. The beta phase is going on there, and then the region will be complete. We've also introduced Apple Pay in numerous countries. No matter what you think about Apple Pay, it's fun, I would say, when you have it.
Sagen dürfen wir ja. Wir haben, glaube ich, also mit Apple verhandeln, das ist wirklich cool. Da merkt man was.
Negotiating with Apple is a cool thing because you can't negotiate anything with them. They tell you what market power really is. Nevertheless, we succeeded quite well. And we already have 250,000 users. This is something I'd like to show you. Of course, we're boasting a bit to a certain extent here, but this is a valuation of platforms, of bank platforms, in terms of functionality and in terms of customer experience. So there are the masters of openness in the top right-hand corner who have all functionalities, not only for themselves, but also in an open environment, and they really try to offer the best possible customer experience. So the one in the top right-hand corner are the best, and there are only two banks in the world that are doing better than we are, DBS from Singapore and OCBC from Singapore. And apart from those two, we are top of class. And I admit I'm proud of that, and I would be happy if I've been able to convince you that I have every reason to be proud of that. The outlook for 2019 as a whole, as I said, we're not setting ourselves specific targets, except that our return on tangible equity will be above 11%, and it certainly will be, despite the unfavorable events in Romania. We can be sure now that our loan growth will be in the upper double-digit range. So I think we have every reason to look forward to a good full-year result for 2019. So we are creating a good basis for 2020. Stefan Dörfler already said that we are now at 13.5% equity ratio. By the end of the year, it will increase. And the way it looks now, we are going to propose a dividend of 1.5 euro. We were asked by the analysts today if we would be willing to pay out a Jubilee dividend, and we said yes, we're going to do that. We're going to pay out to all shareholders and to all employees who were here already in 1819. They will all get a loyalty premium. Those who came later won't get anything. That goes for employees and shareholders. But we said that if our equity ratio were to increase to more than 14% in the coming year, we will think about how to allow our shareholders to participate in this success. So thank you very much. We are, of course, willing to take your questions.
Could you please wait for the microphone, because our press conference is transmitted on the internet as well. First question. Mr. Treichel, my question goes to you. Interest development. You said you cannot turn Europeans into Japanese, and you've criticized the politicians. How would you act? What would your advice be? I don't want to criticize the politicians and say that they should mingle with the ECB policy. they should refrain from that. Politicians should do what they want to do. Of course, you can criticize, but what we need is an independent European Central Bank. In Europe, we find ourselves in a situation where, to my mind, attention, it would deserve the attention of the politicians. For quarters, they've been hearing now that because of the interest situation and the investment habits of the Europeans in countries such as Austria and Germany, you have massive asset losses year on year. Last year, the Austrians lost more than 5 billion euros in assets. And one should talk about this and not just ignore this. And I think this should be criticized. This is, of course, a matter of the European Central Bank and of the banks. This is what they say. And this is not the case, because this is a serious problem, because we'll stay with this problem for quite some time, and I think it's about time that the politicians tackle this. There are options to deal with this outside of the ECB, but this all falls into the activities of the politicians. Financial formation, tax situation. The politicians have to realize that we need a capital market if we want to get a hand on the rising real estate prices. There is a direct link between the absence of a capital market and the fact that young families cannot afford apartments and flats in Austria anymore. And this link is there, and this is not the task of the ECB. And this, of course, also goes beyond the remit of the banks. But the politicians have to tackle this. And if the months pass by, the situation will become more difficult. Ms. Osman.
Ana Osman, Profitro from Romania. I have some questions regarding the situation in Romania. And the first are linked to the legal case you lost with the Bauspar institution that caused you net loss despite very good operating results. So do you have any concrete plans to reduce the damage? Did you identify an extraordinary way to attack the decision in an arbitrage court or, I don't know, a European court? Another question is, do you intend to close down that business completely in Romania, or do you have any plans, given the uncertainty in the legislation and in the court decisions? I have some other questions regarding the banking tax, but maybe you answer this first.
Okay. Look, it's as you can imagine, it's a very unpleasant situation. I think that when we decided many years ago to introduce a building society in Romania, we did that because we were convinced that Romania is a country where building society can have an enormously positive effect on society, because apartments for housing for young people is a very, very difficult issue. Since we are one of the oldest, since we own one of the oldest and most established building societies in Austria, we thought it would be a good thing if we bring that to Romania to help young people to find a way on how they can finance their homes. And as opposed to Austria for the moment, where for the moment the building society business at zero interest rates is not very interesting, but in Romania 5 years ago and now it's a very interesting thing. So what is a very, very serious thing. And you know, as a major, I think in terms of money, the biggest investor in Romania, it makes us very sad that politicians, or in that case, a judge, takes decisions that endanger something that is to the benefit of the Romanian population. And because of that, we will take every measure we can to fight and to see that the building society business in Romania can continue to contribute to the ability of young people to buy apartments and have a better life. We will not give up on that. What our chances for success are, I don't know. But it's a worthwhile cause. We're doing it not only for us, we're doing it a lot more for the 400,000 people in Romania that are affected by this court decision. It's a worthwhile fighting for.
There's no scenery to close down a business.
Well, if you know, that does not depend on us. That depends on. I'm sorry to say again, on politics in Romania, how they treat us. If they treat us with respect, we will continue. If they treat us with disrespect, we're going to close it down. Meaning what? This is a court decision. You are waiting for the legislation to improve. I mean, the policy. Well, the law. You know the situation. The law is very specific and very clear in our favor. We abided the law 100%, and the judge decided against the law. That is a fact. That's not a situation that is easy to be dealt with. So we'll see. The provision was reduced to 150 million compared to 230 that you initially. That is correct. Yeah. And the explanation. Well, this is the first one was sort of the absolute. We had very little time to calculate. We calculated day and night, and we calculated the maximum potential damage. And since this is a very serious amount, we had to immediately release it. That's our obligation as a stock-listed company. And we had to list the absolute maximum potential damage. And what you now see in our results is what we believe the actual number, according to the present status of the case, will be, and that's 150. Now, regarding the banking tax on assets in Romania, you had an estimation of 20 million euros, if I remember correctly. Do you now have a more precise calculation, because the Ministry of Finance just published the methodology, and were you able to reduce the amount by meeting some targets that the law has with the increasing market share? All I can say to the banking tax that the individual that has introduced the banking tax in Romania is in the meantime in jail, where he belongs, and the rest of what's left over is another 20 million damage that we will have to book in the fourth quarter of this year. And regarding the operational expensive.
Was die Betriebsaufwendungen in Rumänien angeht und auch auf Gruppenebene, haben Sie da konkrete Pläne oder eine Strategie für eine Reorganisation des Geschäftes, um die Betriebsaufwendungen zu reduzieren? Wenn Sie sich die Ergebnisse in Rumänien ansehen, die sind gut, die Effizienz steigt drastisch. Wir haben fast 100 Filialen geschlossen, nicht aufgrund der Kosten, sondern einfach weil sich in Rumänien auch die Kundengewohnheiten ändern. Wir beobachten eine sehr interessante Entwicklung. Die Leute betreiben ihre Bankgeschäfte nicht mehr von zu Hause aus, sondern eher vom Büro aus. In Wohngebieten haben wir daher Filialen geschlossen, aber im Wesentlichen sind wir mit den Ergebnissen der BCR durchaus zufrieden. Und ich habe ja schon erwähnt, dass sich auch George als ein großer
Thank you. My name is Gergő Ratz from the Magyar Nemzet newspaper in Hungary. I have two questions for you. The Hungarian government recently launched a rather extensive subsidy program supporting families. I was wondering whether you have some projections how this may affect your mortgage loan volumes in the future. And the other issue that you mentioned about rising salary costs in Hungary amongst other markets, do you have some scenarios to cut back on that, maybe through digital channels? Do you have any intentions to reducing salaries, or that's just the way of doing business now?
I think that salary levels have nothing to do with digitization from our point of view. But first of all, to the baby loans, yes, it will have an effect. There will be a switch from some mortgage lending into baby lending. I think it's a very interesting product. I find it very amusing. We were the first one out with it. I think we already have over 2,000 clients on that front. Yeah, it's an interesting approach, but it's not the only thing that's interesting about the approach that Hungary is taking in many aspects. So I hope it works out. If you go that path, we're happy if our clients take it. And yes, it will have some spillover effects on the mortgage lending, but according to our present calculations, it will not have an effect on our profitability. We're very happy with the development of Erste Bank in Hungary. We're growing on that front, but we're also growing. We're growing on the corporate front, and in principle, I think we are in a different situation in Hungary than we are, for example, in Romania or in the Czech Republic or Slovakia. We're not a very large bank. We are a medium-sized bank with a relatively well-established but not too large branch network. I don't think that there is any necessity in Hungary to think about branches from a cost point of view, because we don't have that many, and we have improved the efficiency of our Hungarian bank dramatically. So what we do now is we wait. Unfortunately, Hungary is one of the last countries that we move in with George. It will happen, I think, beginning of next year. And then we see the reaction to George in Hungary. So any adaptations in the system that we presently have will have to wait, I think, at least until 2021 before we take a decision on that.
Frau Krawanik.
In der Presseaussendung steht, Herr Treichel, dass
in the press release, you're saying that the most urgent task in the coming years is to develop risk-adjusted investment products. Now, I take it that such products do not yet exist. Of course, such products exist, but there is a conflict involved, because there is one thing we've learned from the financial crisis: very complicated products which artificially generate 1.5 or 2% is not what we should do. We shouldn't have mixed equity bond funds with 6 hedge layers and guarantee options and conversion puts in order to sell that to our retail customers. You can't do that anymore. We need something very basic and simple, and this is not easy to find. We are doing an excellent job, I think, and from time to time we have to enter areas which we wouldn't enter under different circumstances, and the good risks have to be brought in order to be able to offer our customers a better return. But think about the dimensions we are talking about. If we really want to do something for asset generation on the part of our customers in the region, in my opinion, if we really want to have an impact in the coming 2 to 3 years, we would have to convert 50 billion savings deposits into asset management products, and finding possibilities for 50 billion in the coming years with no major risks, because we don't want to tell our customers that 50% of their assets are lost. We are working on that. There are not many banks that report 6% growth in asset management. We're doing our best, but it's not easy. Ms. Hase, I have an entirely different question. When we last sat in this room, you said that you would be expanding with George, and you implied that you may want to go to Switzerland or Germany. Can you tell us more about that today? Well, I repeat what I said then. First, we have to do everything that needs to be done in our region. Now, if I were to start talking about Germany, now imagine what kind of phone calls I would get from Radovan Jelačić in Hungary. He would ask me, have I gone crazy? First, he wants George to be installed in Hungary, and then he will let me think about Germany. Now, I won't tell you more about that, because first we need to establish George in Hungary, and people there would blame me for anything that I would do elsewhere. So first we have to complete the region. Serbia has to be included as well by the end of 2021, if at all. Perhaps it's going to be 2022, and we have many customers there, and we want to grow digitally strongly there. Ms. Sellner? My question would have been the same. Well, I can only can we repeat? Should we repeat the answer? The answer is the same.
Thank you. I'm István Palkó from Hungary, portfolio.hu. My question is, do you see any chance now to buy Budapest Bank? And how could you describe your acquisition strategy in Hungary?
Well, I have to be open on that. I would enjoy that, but you're asking the wrong person. I think if the government or whoever represents the seller approaches us and tells us you have a serious chance if you bid, we would. So far, nobody has approached us.
What about other entities to buy acquisitions, portfolios?
We would definitely look at it because it would fit our portfolio, but I think the likelihood that we will be asked, due to sort of my very rudimentary knowledge of Hungarian politics, is that the chance that somebody will ask us actually is relatively limited.
Mr. Grøndal? Ja, da vorne.
Noch eine Frage zum Thema M&A. Sie haben
A question about M&As. During the analyst call, you said that you did not submit a bid for Komercijalna Banka in Serbia after a thorough investigation. What is the reason? Now, we took this decision because in Serbia, we have excellent opportunities. Our bank is growing in Serbia. We started out with a market share of 2%, which we've doubled in the meantime. But this is the market where we have the fewest customers. It's the market where we will be entering into the core banking system, and it's the market where we have the best chance of finding out in the region to what extent George can make us independent of growth elsewhere in our own bank. There are extremely well-qualified people in Serbia, and we want to grow with George. We've decided that, and that costs something like 500 million. Well, if we were to buy a bank, it would cost us 500 million. We would have 100 branches, and we asked us, we would have to integrate them, and we said, now what can we do with 500 million if we invest that in digital and in our employees? And we decided in favor of that and will not initiate another integration process.
Hello, Cristian Hosuk from Ziarul Financiar Romanian. After 20 years and 14 years in your portfolio, BCR lose the leading position in Romanian banking system. What was wrong? Because when you buy BCR in 2005, it was BCR had 25% of the market. Now it's 16. Okay. So with your management, you lose 9%. Okay. If you want to regain the leading position in Romanian banking system, in what way?
Okay. What is your definition of the leading bank?
Assets.
Assets.
Yeah.
Okay. The last time I heard somebody talk about assets as the definition of the leading bank was my father in the year 1981, who was incredibly proud that Kreditanstalt was the bank with the highest assets in Germany and the most employees and the most branches, and therefore the most powerful thing. Now, and his big idol was Deutsche Bank, which still is the largest bank in Germany by assets, by employees, and by everything else. I don't want to be dismissive now, but this is so outdated that I would really urge you to grow into 2019. Size of assets means nothing. If we want to grow our assets in Romania and become the biggest bank by assets in Romania, give me the date when you want to have that happen, and I will deliver, if you pay me something for that. Our goal in Romania is to be the best bank in Romania, and if you criticize us on that and say, have you achieved to be the best bank in Romania? My answer is clearly, we have not. I can tell you one of the reasons, because from 2006 on until 2012, we just fucked up too often ourselves on getting there. But during the last years, we did a really good job. And here and today is the first time where I can tell you with full conviction and with all respect for Banca Transilvania, they're doing a great job, but they have absolutely zero chance in competing with us for being the best bank in Romania. Just wait and see. Unfortunately, you will not be able to ask me on the next press conference in the bank, but I will invite you to the foundation. Come in 2 years, and if I'm wrong, I pay you a lot of money.
In terms of the best bank, what is your financial criteria? I mean,
My financial what?
criteria. In
Criteria?
yeah, profit. I don't know.
It's not even profit. I mean, there you have to also differentiate very much on what type of business you're doing. I mean, we're producing a return on tangible equity for the moment of 11% in the group, and with that, we are one of the most profitable banks in Europe. However, due to the fact that we operate in a lot of countries where you can have higher returns, they expect more from us. It depends on what kind of business mix you have. If you want to have one criteria where I'm definitely, we would need to take a poll in Romania, 50,000 people, and ask them, who do you believe is the best bank in Romania? And if the majority of those people say it's BCR, then we have won. And if at the same time, whether we have a 12% return on equity or 11 or 13, I don't care. Because if everybody in the country believes that we are the best bank, the other thing that will happen, that all the good people in Romania, and there are lots of them in Romania, will want to join and work for us. And for that, with that, again, we will make sure that for the next 20 years, we will be the best bank in Romania. And that is our goal. And I think our management is doing a great job. And by the way, I am a great fan of Sergio Manea, one of the best guys we have.
The second question, if you look at the Romanian economic situation, we have good figures, okay, for 5% economic growth, but in the meantime, the banking system is down compared with the percentage in GDP. Do you have some idea how can reverse this situation?
What situation do you want to revert? That the share of the banking system is increasing again?
It's increasing, but not as fast as you lose in the past year.
I don't think I don't think that's really necessary. The reason why the banking as a percentage of the Romanian GDP has shrunk is simply the fact that not only us, but BRD, Transylvania, and all the other banks have written off very substantial portfolios of non-performing loans. I think the banking system in Romania is not the problem of Romania. I think the banking system in Romania is actually working extremely well, and it has a lot of very good banks. The problem of Romania are different but not to be found in the banking system. But I don't want to talk too long about that now. So.
And the third question, the Parliament approved the new board of National Bank of Romania, and the governor Isărescu stay in the same position. He said that his goal is to introduce euro in Romania in 5 years. What do you think about that? Do you think Romania need the euro, or you prefer to stay on the lei?
So Governor Isărescu said that in 5 years. So he will still be around in 5 years.
Yeah.
He's already the longest serving governor of a central bank in the world. Let's talk about that in 5 years and not now. I mean, for the moment, Romania is definitely not ready for it. Maybe the situation in 5 years will be a completely different one in the euro. Maybe things will change, there are so many political uncertainties, and some of them can change very quickly. For the moment, I would not suggest that Romania would pursue that path, but I think it should have the goal in mind. I think that the central bank is doing an absolutely excellent job in Romania, but he still needs another 2 to 3 years of consolidation. I would not suggest a country to move into the Eurozone that has a pretty substantial current account deficit, which Romania still has.
Do you have a recommendation to Mr. Isărescu what to do in 5 years for the banking system? From your experience, as
I have a very good relation, but I have also not talked about him that he would join our board. That is completely false. When I talk with him, Actually, I talk with him at least 50% of the time about his success as a winemaker and not as a central banker.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
The colleague from Hungary.
Thank you. My name is Gergely Brückner from Hungary Index HU. I want to ask you about the regulatory part of digitalization. For example, in Hungary, we postponed the start of the instant payment system, and we have different information about the PSD2, how will it start, what will stay national level, what will be European level. How do you see this kind of projects? Will they change your business dramatically? And if yes, it's a danger, or are the possibilities so?
Well, you know, I don't think it's the PSD2 and the whole regulation on the digital side is a risk, of course, because it changes the business completely. With the consent of a client, you are obliged to pass on data to any third party. That is, of course, broadens the field of competition dramatically. But at the same time, as I tried to explain before, if you do a good job and you can be an aggregator, you can benefit dramatically from it. What is disturbing, but maybe Peter want to talk about that too, but I just tell you what my view is that, again, we see a very diverse interpretation of rules, the ability of different EU countries of interpreting this legislation differently. And then within the countries, you have different treatments of banks than you have of other participants in that treatment. We just heard that for part of the Austrian industry, the 14th of September is not doable, so the whole tourism industry is being taken out of that. And you know, I now don't dare to say what I want to say, because I would again say something about politicians, and Mrs. Graber is a staunch defender of the political system in Austria, so she's always very upset when I criticize politicians in Austria. But this is now the realization that we need to establish one system in Europe. And that if we have a different system in Hungary than we have in Austria, and a different system in Austria than we have in Germany, and a different system in Germany than we have in France, there is no Europe. And that's a disadvantage to all companies that are operating in Europe. That needs to be solved also at some point in time.
Nog een vraag van de mevrouw Haase.
Und Herr Dr. Treichel, werden Sie uns vermissen?
Dr. Treichel, will you miss us? Will you miss us? Thank you for this upgrading. I'm not a doctor, but I'm sure you will miss me terribly. But I'll find ways and means to get through to you in some other function. I say this in a joking way, but this is a serious concern, because I do believe in the things that I say, honestly.
Nix. Gar nichts. Ich gehe in die Stiftung und kümmere mich um...
Well, I'll become part of the Stiftung, and I'll be in charge of asset formation there and social banking. And I'm really looking forward to that, because I know a lot about this, I'm good at it, and I will set a few goals for myself. As of the 4th class in elementary school, in those countries where we are active, economics and financial education will become an obligatory subject. In Serbia, in Hungary, And in the Czech Republic, we'll be more successful than in Austria in this regard, mind you, but it's necessary everywhere and highly important. A new generation is growing up here. Of course, we have grown up in a totally different time, where the interpretation was, if I have no money, I have to pay interest if I need some. But now we have this generation where the difference between having money and not having money is zero. And this is something we have to tackle and come to terms with. So these were nice concluding words, and of course Mr. Treichel will be available for interviews also as of next year. Thank you for having joined us.